playing Flay Parker, but oh look, we got the ribbon dance thing out here. I was just doing this with my other character. You get 10% bonus XP from touching the pole. Like a whirring dervish. All fists and elbows. I would like to have someone help me level my character, but I don't know necessarily what's the best way to go about, like not boosting your character, but leveling, you know what I mean? What's the fastest way to level? Like instances, Echoes of Serenity. Invisibility liquor. I received an item, invisibility liquor. So we got to heal this guy. How do you suspect me to do that? Like that? Like regular heal? Okay, cool. I can't imagine I could do this quest on another character. Should be complete then, right? And I have to fortify him now. Oh, I forgot. That's what they meant. Cool. It's a priest only quest. Where do we turn this shit in at? Where is it? Smithers? Smithers? Alright now. Hogger. We need a group for Hogger. I don't really have a group. Kinda just flying solo, guys. Flying solo, I might hit the ground. Ooh. Yeah, my opinion here is like, okay, so as much as people do or do not like Michael Saylor or whatever, they're like they don't like the stretch mastery thing, credit this, that, the other. I don't really. Yeah, I'm not a fucking economist. I don't know how what that consists of. But at the end of the day, you'd have to think the amount. Is it something that people are saying isn't working because of how it's structured, or because there's like an orchestrated attack against it? You know what I mean? Because then you could consider like, well, if someone were to do like a 51% attack against Bitcoin, it doesn't necessarily mean that Bitcoin is flawed. It's how do you keep bad actors from attacking something? You know what I mean? Which I don't know enough about it to say. You know what I mean? Like if there was some sort of malicious code injected into the Bitcoin source or whatever, and um, through a 51% attack, you know, it has happened to other blockchains and stuff. Um, or if someone used like a quantum thing, you know what I mean, a quantum hack, you're like, now, who would you be more upset with, uh, Satoshi and Bitcoin, or the person that launched like an attack against it, right? And I can't help but think that I'm not an economist. I don't know how this shit works, but if what Michael Saylor has managed to do is create something that works kind of like like it's a process, or you know, maybe not a process, but there's a lot of moving parts, right? And is it something that is flawed in its structuring, or is it something that isn't resilient as people would like, if that makes sense? If that is indeed what's going on, yeah, I don't know. So like, without assuming, oh shit, these are all like way higher level. Yeah, some fucking these dogs is mean. But the thing is like, would you say Bitcoin is something that if it were to undergo a 51% attack, would you say Bitcoin didn't work, or would you say that maybe somebody shouldn't be attacking Bitcoin? You know what I mean? It's kind of the point. And I'm sitting there thinking like, well, what you don't want to see is a situation where the people that hold Bitcoin or want to see the bull cycle in its full potential and all that stuff put up a willing sacrifice, like for for the sake of pumping their bags or whatever, because it could very well be you on the next go around, right? I mean, some people probably not. Some people have a better chance than others of that kind of thing happening. But the fact of the matter is that as much as people like what's his name, Peter Schiff or Peter Skiff or whatever the fuck his name is, hate on Bitcoin, it's like they hate on Michael Saylor as well. Um, and I just wish I knew more about it so I could say, like, if I were some sort of expert on the matter, to say, like, oh yeah, the reason why it failed is not because it's undergoing a stress test or it's failing a stress test, is that it failed because it's inherently flawed. You know what I mean? And I don't know enough to say one way or another, but it seemed like for years and years people were cheering this guy on, you know? So it seems strange that all of a sudden that the numbers aren't where people want them, that suddenly they're cursing his name. I'm like, well, how many of these people are just fair weather fans to begin with? I would say more power to them, but I don't really, I don't really know all the ins and outs. Them guys are gonna keep helping me kill these dogs. But it seems like it's orchestrated. Like, I don't know how much he has to do with the FUD, man. I really don't. You know what I mean? It seems like he's playing a part to me. That's all. You know what I mean? I usually got a pretty keen eye for that kind of thing. Because the narrative that we've seen here recently is, but then again, this could just be this being publicized, not necessarily how much, not to say it was kept a secret, but when he was like, and I used ChatGPT to help me structure the thing, right? And everybody was like, oh, you know, big red flag, he used AI, you know, vibe coded the thing. I'm like, well, is that a statement he's made in the past before all that? Because I just now heard of it the last few days. Because you got to think, how much of this is him fudding? It seems like, or at least are playing a part. You know, kind of seems that way to me. But I could be wrong, man. He could or couldn't be playing a part. Really, I don't fucking know. It just seems like that's one of those things that, like, right when it's all fucking coming to, you know, all this shit's falling apart, he's like, yeah, and I vibe coded it too. You're like, oh shit, right? Kind of the oh shit moment. I don't know if that's been what he's been saying this entire time in the news, the media, or the whatever just started mentioning that part specifically, or what. But it just seems like it's one of them things. Like, 'cause what we had that was the sell-off that triggered the dip. Now we have another dip, and now the the narrative that the thing was vibe coded. And I can't necessarily say if that is or isn't a good idea. I wish I did I don't know. He's the guy that knows how to do that kind of thing, right? So even if he used AI to do it, as long as he didn't just sit there and ask the AI, hey, can you come up with all this for me, and not even cross his T's or dot his I's, yeah, I'm sure he knows what he's doing with that kind of thing. And I just don't like the idea like these people are all jumping on the bandwagon and like throwing tomatoes at the guy. Like they were cheering him on up until just a few months ago, right? And not everybody though. I see a few people still supporting him and stuff. Probably as many as there are talking shit. But you would just hope that people wouldn't try to eat one of their own, you know? Because at the end of the day, the institutions and all the stuff that print all the money to begin with and have, you know, full and total control over the economy and all of its tendrils, right, are the ones more than likely behind the scenes orchestrating all of this, right? So I wouldn't see this as like the social engineers attack on Bitcoin versus the like software engineering hack of like a 51% attack, you know what I mean? This is like not necessarily the technological pronged approach to trying to stifle Bitcoin and its growth, you know, by taking out digital or figureheads in the community and trying to liquidate them and shit, you know, like, whereas a 51% attack, I think, orchestrated by the same people would constitute a crime, you know, or potentially, right? I wouldn't necessarily know what law they would cite in that matter, but this is the, like, you get what I'm saying? This is one prong of what could be a multi-prong attack, but currently just one prong. And I'm not having a reason to say that anyone's trying to 51% attack or fuck with Bitcoin's actual code or anything to make it not work correctly, or quantum wallet hacking and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm not making that claim, but this is the the social engineering equivalent of that, though. You get what I'm saying? Because Michael Saylor is traditionally, from what I can gather, a well-received individual in the community, and they're always going to have naysayers and critics and all that. But for them to be, and here's the thing: is like for someone to get PvP'd that hard, you know, you have to wonder what it is they're doing that someone doesn't like, and then if it's the right people, then you would think that maybe they should be doing that. But I can't. These are all just like. Not to say a baseless argument, but I don't know enough to say that's the truth. You know what I mean? Look at all them crits. But in the last few years, if you would ask anybody the name in the word bubble, you know what I mean? Name most associated with Bitcoin that isn't Satoshi, they would probably tell you Michael Saylor. And currently the person is like getting daggered left and right by the same people that would probably get rid of Bitcoin if they could, you know. So I can't necessarily condone or cheer on or be appreciative of or silver linings any of the shit that they're doing to the guy. Then again, if it isn't working because it's structured poorly, I don't know what to say. I don't have all the facts at hand to make that sort of claim or call, right? I hope he doesn't. I hope it all works out, really. This might hit super hard. Are you serious? Are you serious? And the thing that not necessarily what would concern me more is that it seems like there's more of a push to do some sort of lawsuit against MicroStrategy than there is to do against Pump Fund, and I would say that given the nature of the thing here is like what can appear to, and I'm not for either of these things. I'm just saying it just surprises the shit out of me that unless I haven't looked up, but like these highly publicized kind of lawsuits against, if you've ever blah blah blah, you're like, why the fuck haven't Pump Fund before anything else, right? You would think. Not necessarily pounding the pavement for someone to sue Pump Fund, but I'm trying. I'm going through it myself currently. only people knew what I knew. They wouldn't bother me about shit. Am I not getting credit for killing these fucking dogs this way? God damn it. Complete. We killed a bunch of dogs. And we gotta kill a forest bear. Smite. I'm trying not to personalize things right now because I tend to put myself in other people's shoes when it gets like this, and I'm like, I start taking the shit personally, and I'm like, I start relating it to how things have happened to me in the past, and I start to not fucking, I start to be, not to say spiteful, but it bothers me. Because it's indicative of a bully's mentality, and it's like, what is a bully? Is anyone that's going to pick on someone they perceive to be weaker than them. And I hate when people have to find out the hard way for my sake and theirs that it's not right to fuck with people. You know what I mean? And if I've ever been bullied in the past, every person that's ever tried to fucking bully me out of anything has found out the hard way. And it's like, just take my word for it. I guess you people wouldn't fucking bother me. That's all. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me not to personalize things because they always find out the hard way. And I'm like, well, if you weren't fucking sticking your nose somewhere it didn't belong, you wouldn't have these problems. Wonder why you have a black eye kind of thing, right? It's like, I get sick of this shit. And I've done nobody any wrong. I'm fucking just trying to make my own in my life and all that stuff. Yeah, so like I don't necessarily need special extra attention and people bumping down on me twice as hard. Like, for what? It's basically I'm just not playing your game. Yeah, I don't necessarily need to be targeted and harassed and to have people come after me and to try and make my life difficult and liquidate me out of positions and get me to sell coins that I care about because it's like I threaten your establishment and your establishment is a pile of shit, basically. And yeah, I don't like bullies. I don't like why does it matter? It's one of those things where it's like someone that has yeah, it's hard to explain, but like in a lot of ways I feel that I was not given a fair shake amongst the pump fund community, and it's like it's not necessarily the community's fault, but or it's not necessarily anybody at pump fund's fault, but I start to question and wonder how much orchestration took place from people at pump fund, and God willing I will get to the fucking bottom of it if there ever was, and I'll have my day in court if I find out otherwise, right? But I had people harassing me at some point in time, and I would like to know how connected to Pump Fun are they, directly under management from somebody there or not, or just some bad actor in the community. I don't know. Either way, for everybody's sake, I sure as shit hope it isn't. And for no other reason other than, well, you have this interpretation, or not interpretation, but assumption of what it is that I'm here to do, and if you just sit and have a talk with me, you would know what the fuck I'm about. It's kind of hard to do, though, if everybody wants to keep their goddamn masks on and live in secrecy and all be cloak and daggers and shit, but okay, I warned you. You know what I mean? I will have my day in court if it does come down to it. Same with these other people, until I know more, but like, shit, it's not good if they do, I know that much. If only people knew, they wouldn't bother me. But I kind of like that they try to pick fights with me, in all honesty, because then they find out the hard way. And I'm like, well, that's why you just don't treat people that way. You shouldn't have to shouldn't take a come to Jesus moment for you to do the right thing. You know what I mean? It really shouldn't. The fact of the matter is, like, how many of your day-to-day life things do you do that really, like, what do you have to consider to treat somebody correct? Trying to bully and pick on people and start fights with people, like, well, because why? It's like, well, because you don't have a well-known name, you're doing something we don't approve of, which is basically kind of pointing out the hypocrisy while also proving what a scam some of this shit is, right? And I know it upsets somebody's apple cart somewhere, and I can't help it that a platform that has been notoriously known for being like a launch pad for 99% scams and bullshit has something legitimate come along with questions, you know, obvious questions here and there about some of the practices, but as far as the technology is concerned, you know, something that's actually an innovation, right? And I see that for what it is, and I get attacked for participating in the process as much as anyone, you know. And I can't help it that everybody else doesn't see things for what they are, because they're also goddamn blind by the fact that, well, this good old boys network of people that, I'll be the first to say, some of these people they aren't the pinball wizard when it comes to meme coining. You're like, it's an inside job. These are all people that all just trade inside information. And if you don't think at some point in time, one of these guys is the one orchestrating some of it, if not all of it, doesn't get handed a piece of paper that tells them, if you don't tell on us, you're going to do 35 years in prison. Or if you don't tell on these people, you're going to get 35, you know, if you don't tell us what we want to know, you're going to get 35 years in prison. And that person is going to sing like a canary. You know what I mean? And if my name's on any of this shit of people orchestrating against me to make my life difficult for trying to be the only one with clean hands in any of it, I'll be fucking very upset. You know what I mean? Because I don't cohort with people. I don't talk to these people. I don't join their chat groups. I don't communicate with them. I haven't made a dime off anything on Pump Fund. I've never launched a meme coin. I've never traded a coin through Pump Fund's platform. Had nothing to do with any of this shit. Just a bypassing or a bystander in the community. And the amount of grief that I received was not acceptable. Not acceptable at all. Because why? It's like, well, I'm a seemingly honest individual trying to do things the right way, trying to do it on the up and up, trying to be as compliant with what I believe are good practices as humanly possible. And because of that, I was harassed. I was followed around online. I had people constantly trying to communicate some sort of ignorance towards me, you know, and trying to bully me into doing shit that I don't approve of. Yeah, that's the thing, is I don't know if these people were part of any sort of actual part of, like, I'm not trying to make an accusation, that's all. Members of the community, I don't know where they get their directives from. That's it. You know, I have no clue where they get their fucking directives from. Sometimes it's just bad actors, you know. But I would really hate to find out if anyone actually orchestrated or tried to fuck me over, because you know, and I will find out. You know, I always do. For now, though, I have no tangible proof of that. Tangible, but I have enough circumstantial to make me suspicious. Now, I don't know where that comes from, though. So, that being said, I can't necessarily make an accusation based off of an assumption, but I can get to the bottom of it eventually. And it wouldn't be the first time that I did, and it won't be the last time if it is, right? But the thing is like, I just, so much resistance. Basically, I'm not playing by your rules. Well, that's because I'm not part of your thing. I don't want to be a part of your thing. My thing here isn't to rug people's grandmas out of their goddamn meme coins over and over again until the entire space becomes such a cesspool that we're looking at all-time lows again, you know, for the entire crypto community because of a few people that all they wanted to do was fuck each other over and make a few dollars, like at all costs, right? And you're looking at the person that's lost everything trying to do the shit the right way and receive the most criticism of anyone that I've seen participate in all this shit. So, whatever. So like I say, I'm not trying to personalize things, but I don't, you know, I'm not alone here that, you know, I know when people are trying to bump down on people and shit, like it's blatantly obvious. They try to do this shit to me all the time. Like, I don't know where these people get their orders from or where they get their directives or whatever, but at some point in time, I had people coming to me telling me that I needed to sell all my tokens and buy it up on these wallets, and these people would, they would try to help me, basically, what I believe to be, whether or not it's criminal, it's super shady, and I would rather not have to explain any of it to the government come that day. You know what I mean? And if that day comes for me, if fucking no skin off my teeth, dude, I don't give a shit. I did everything the right way. No one can call me into question about anything, and I've always been that way. And I always keep a meticulous track record of the shit too, so that way, if they ever do come knocking or subpoenaing or whatever, I can always say all I've done was do everything the way that, without them saying directly, but know like how lawyers and stuff had advised me in the past, how to conduct myself in the future and here, you know. Whereas at some point in time, there was absolutely like no guidance really. All there was guidance. There was no legislation or law about anything in cryptocurrency. It was just guidance, right? And I'm like, well, I can't necessarily follow just guidance because it's like the government just telling you what to do without it being lawful, right? So I can consider guidance in making my decision, and that is why they call it guidance. But to just blindly follow guidance from the Securities and Exchange Commission, I wouldn't say is the greatest idea, you know, because then you're basically somebody's bitch and they're not giving you a reason or having to, you're not making them do their due diligence and like what it means to pass a law or legislate if you just blindly comply with what they tell you to do. Like it's equal parts responsibility on your part and theirs to, to be lawful in the matter, you know what I mean? And them just telling you, well, because we can make your life difficult is not a reason to do something, you know, that's extortion. And it works both ways, whether it's the person doing it to someone else or the government doing it to the person. So I've never been one to just accept guidance from anyone because it's like, you want me just to let you be my God then and make my decisions and everything else? Yeah, fuck you. No. If it makes sense, I'll do it. So some of the you know best practices things were like things I mentioned before. Treat wallets like accounts. If too many accounts is suspicious. Why do you need 50 bank accounts? It's suspicious, isn't it? You'd be suspicious of the guy that had 50 bank accounts. Now, that's not necessarily law, but common sense would say it's a best practice, right? An excessive amount of wallets and trading and things to make things look like the way they aren't. You're like, yeah, that's deceptive, and even if you can't say it's against the law, it's not best practices, right? So I've stuck to my guns on all that. Haven't had any troubles yet. Should the day come, you know, my nose is 110% clean. I have not participated. I've had offers and all this shit and just ignored the shit. Did my own thing. Stuck to my guns on it. I got made fun of for it. You know what I mean? They try to drive me out of a thing that like they could give a shit less about, right? And I'm like, well, I don't respond well to that thing. I don't negotiate with terrorists either, you know. Like I've had way scarier, meaner people fuck with me in real life that lived to regret it and some that didn't. So, take that as you will. So to think a bunch of nameless, faceless goons on the fucking internet? Yeah, right. My internet? Yeah, right. Right, my internet? Right, pretty much, pretty much. More mine than Al Gore's. Yeah. Yeah, I don't respond well to bullies. And people find out that fucking, like, the reason why I conduct myself a certain way is because I know shit that you don't. And I'm not going to let you be my God and make my decisions for me about it either. Because you don't have all the facts at hand. You won't even believe half the shit I have to tell you, you know? So, how to get you to act accordingly? Yeah, just leave you out of the decision making process altogether. Only people knew. But again, by the end of it, you will understand why it is I'm so well liked by the right people. And why, not to say I need your permission, but I have carte blanche to do whatever the fuck I want for the most part, is because they know I always do things for the right reasons. And me being the person that I am has made a lot of people's lives a lot easier. And in the past, I've been able to resolve issues before it became so problematic that it spilled over into somebody else's plate, right? Problem solving for other people's sake, right? Something I failed to do for myself as much as I could, but if it's for somebody else, I don't mind, right? I was telling myself that earlier. Fuck me, running. So we can do dead mines at like level 10, right? What are you doing? Flay Parker. He's level 9. He's a young, level 8. He's a young up and comer. That seems like a fucking thing. Like, just let me turn the quest in here. I see the golden question mark and everything. Let me do it. There they are. Yeah, but it's indicative. Like, how you treat people, regardless of what you think of them, is important. And I mean, your base level. What do you agree a person? How a person should be treated? A total stranger to you, basically. A blank slate. You know what I mean? Like, a blank slate individual has done nothing wrong to you. Uh, how do you believe that they should be treated? If you say, well, like shit, unless they do what I want, you're like, okay, then fuck you. You know, the world has enough problems with people like that. Fuck. Like, I've dealt with people with that mentality, right? Bullies. It's a bully's mentality. It's lame. There's always someone bigger and meaner and scarier out there. God damn it. God damn it. Leave me alone. A potion? Fuck off. Why haven't you reset yet? For fuck's sakes, dude. This Murloc quest is impossible. What level do you have to be? Yeah, so I'm not making any allegation because I've seen nothing from the leadership. I've only seen like nameless, faceless clowns in the community, but part of me questions where do they get their marching orders from, and if I find out, it's not good. If it's from if it's from somewhere that would, it's not going to be good. Not to mean that I shouldn't find out, but if I do find out and it isn't the answer that I'm looking for, then it's not going to be good. I have no real reason to suspect that, but it could be a possibility, so I have to at least entertain it as a thought in the time for the time being till I get a more definitive answer. And that means that if they're doing it to me, they're doing it to a bunch of people, and it's a racket, then, isn't it? I doubt I would be the exception, you know what I mean? Flay Parker. The Flay Parker. Oh my god. So it's almost 5:30. I'll be right back. Fucking back hurts today. I drag a telescope downstairs today. The thing's heavy as shit. I forget if I ran people through Zulfarak. I'm gonna level this character all fucking the old-fashioned way though. Run the actual instances and stuff. It's a whole lot of fun. Oh, look at that. I think it makes leveling a lot easier. Lame. No. Come on, guy. This is super lame. Leveling is shitty, dude. Shit takes fucking forever. I have to fucking get a goddamn chalkboard out to figure this shit out. Each fight is gonna take me 5 minutes. God damn it. I don't have any water either. Walk this way. Not having any water is fucking terrible. Oh, I have some spirit ropes here. It should help with my mana regen. God damn it. deja vu. I think it'd be interesting an app that lets you track every time you have deja vu, right? You have to. People have to be honest though, like. You know, like, did you really have deja vu? You know, versus like, oh, I'd like to just fucking make people's lives difficult kind of shit. I'm kind of sick of people right now. If you can't tell. But the idea is like, no, it's helpful to know when people do and don't get deja vu and have a log of it and like be able to see and then find out if there's a reason why. You know what I mean? If there isn't like a time and a place, like if you can't start finding some corollaries between when people have deja vu and like solar flares or something weird, you know what I mean? That's the thing about like that Bayesian prediction models and things that I was looking up on the internet was the edges, like seemingly unconnected things suddenly influence one another. That would be like the point is like, right, if you keep track of your deja vus, you find out they have to do with sunspots or they have to do this or the other thing, you know, which is all shit that you cannot figure out if you don't keep a log of it, right? So if there was an iPhone app or an Apple app or an Android app rather that lets you just log anytime you had a deja vu, where you were, time and place, you know, and you could put a little journal entry next to it that would tell you what you were thinking about is probably helpful. You know, what was it about? That would be like kept to yourself, but then you would have like a web of these things, right? And you could potentially find out what the fuck's going on with it, right? That would be the goal. But you have to find out, like, people be like, oh yeah, I had deja vu, and they didn't, you know, just to fuck up the numbers. I've had deja vu? Keanu Reeves? Yeah. Hiya. You know, it's kung fu, they say. He says. He says, the same place as earlier? God damn it, where did I get this fucking quest from? I see a golden exclamation part on the mark, point, whatever. Good God, dude. On the map here, Furblow's Deed, it says, is available. Supposed to pick pumpkins. Ugh. The thing that sucks about my master plan for everything, right? I started this shit like 8 or 9 years ago, and now I'm to the part where like I can't get to the next part of my own plan without somebody else doing their part. You know what I mean? Like I can only do so much before, like not to say I need some assistance, but the next few things here in the grand scheme of things. Now, it's a very dynamic plan. Don't get me wrong. These aren't like, oh, I had a fucking whatever, but dynamic is in like things are bound to change, and not the entire plan wasn't thought out to the degree that it will be by the time it's all over with. But my part was, I did my part. I sure as shit did. And this 4th of July will be like 4 years, I believe. And a plan that I started about 8 years ago or so. And this 4th of July will be the 4th year, I believe, since I came up with the idea, put it all in play, and actually followed through with the shit. Things like the thing that eats me alive, not being able to tell people, and there's no reason I can't. It's just it wouldn't be the same if you hear it from me. That's all. You know, it's one of those. You'd much rather hear it from somebody else, I guess. I've explained it to a few people, but so what the fuck is going on here? Why can't I? Quest here says Fur Furlborough. I don't have it in my quest log. Where do I turn these in at? I'm gonna go that way. Fuck it. The thing is, global AI slowdown. Why? Why? There's no reason for a global AI slowdown. There's not a lack of the only what is it? The only thing that they good God, come on now. Ah, fucking Murlocs. What the fuck? Oh, all the way in this place now. One of my least favorite zones. Yeah, the global AI slowdown. That would mean like for that to occur means there can't be the profit motive for doing AI has to disappear, right? Or at least an amount of it. So as long as you can keep, as long as people are paying how much revenue Anthropic has to use Anthropic stuff, then I can't imagine why it would slow down. Until that number starts to decrease, I can't imagine why it would slow down. That's like the speedometer for the rest of the shit, like the indicator, like the build up for AI and all that stuff. Seemingly, the number that they use as part of their projection for that kind of thing comes from how much money is the thing making currently. You know what I mean? And what's weird about AI is that it was such a breakthrough in technology and computer stuff, dad words, calculator stuff. The idea that like when they show, oh, this is people running large language models on these old computers and stuff, you're like, wow. If the fact of the matter is, it's so rare that there's such a breakthrough in software that gives even an old computer such a new use. You know what I mean? That it's like a whole new technology. It makes you wonder, is there ever going to be anything else ever like it? You know, that basically can, granted, you're more likely to want a new computer still, you know what I mean? But the fact that this is a technology that essentially, in theory, could have ran on desktop computers or terminal computers in the 70s and 80s, right? Chatbots and stuff, given some of the lower amount token count models and all that stuff are more efficient or less efficient or whatever the thing is. Like in theory, the bottleneck was the technology itself, not necessarily the compute, right? Because they show them running on large language models on like old ass computers and stuff all the time. Which is, it's just weird to think that such a breakthrough in technology ended up, that's just crazy to me. To where if you had a computer from the 70s that could have ran a large language model, even a very limited one, to the degree that they do today, you would say, well, that's better than a computer in the late 90s even, you know what I mean? Like that amount of impactful usefulness, you know, or an impact, what a positive impact and how useful that is. And now currently, we're liable to see more innovations in the future that, like, oh, this is a breakthrough in architecture or design or whatever, that seemingly shoes up like a large amount of compute and traditional computer resources, and is effectively able to do the same thing as something that would normally require, you know, more system resources. Like, just like it did on the old computers, you know. Not that everybody's clamoring to buy like old antique computers to test this theory or whatever, but people have demonstrated that you can run the science behind it. You can do it on an old computer. You know what I mean? I don't know how long it takes to generate a response or whatever, but like you can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of thing. You know, I guess you can with computers. And as long as the fucking speedometer on the thing is saying, yeah, well, quarter over quarter, how much Anthropic is making in revenue, which is like a raw number that is like, I think, probably one of the more strongest indicators as to like how much resources that can be allocated to the actual AI buildup. It's like, well, now they've gotten to the point where they've built a substantial amount of AI infrastructure. How do they improve God damn it. How they improve the software part, and like where seemingly older technology can be used to the degree like you know, years and years beyond what its current capabilities are. And as long as the number for like the amount of money that you can actually make using the Anthropic's fucking Claude and Mythos and all that stuff, you're like, well, it stands to reason that improving the software is not as expensive as the actual hardware buildup, right? Especially if it's like requires just more training or more compute to train or more data and all that stuff. Like those seem to be currently the cheaper portions of it, right? Am I mistaken if I say that? It might be. But so long as the thing's saying it's able to print this much money quarter over quarter, people using the service, the only thing that I could see disrupting that number is people moving towards localized hosting and all that stuff, which we have seen a push for that kind of thing somewhat, but not to the degree that I think it would upset the actual thing. Because why? It's like, well, you still can't download Mythos and run it on your own computer, can you? I don't think you can, right? I wish I knew more about all this stuff, but I believe I'm correct in assuming that you can't. But it won't be forever, you know what I mean? God damn it, all these quests here. These are all Furblow's Deed. Get the fuck out of here. Yeah, I don't have that quest. Where are the golden question marks and all that? Yeah, I don't know what Anthropic has that other people don't. You know what I mean? I really don't. Like, what makes their thing so special? I know it seems to outperform, like, Mythos, since, you know, it's so good they can't even you can't even use the thing anymore, right? That's crazy. That rarely ever happens. In technology, the only other time that's ever happened is nuclear fission and fusion, but mostly fission, where they're like, we have to regulate and we have to control who is and isn't allowed to use the technology. Yeah, I mean, I guess to some degree you would say that like they regulate how much you can or can't broadcast on the radio and all that, but as far as like no outright, only the government's allowed to use this kind of thing. Only one other instance where the government has had a monopoly on who could and couldn't use the technology. So, must be pretty important. And if you can come up with another example, please let me know. But I think just nuclear is the only other thing I can think of where the government has actually had to like step in and create a regulatory committee and decide who gets to play gatekeeper with who doesn't get to use the technology. So, and this time, the private sector beat him to the punch. Isn't that interesting? Makes you wonder if the private sector had been the one to get to the nuclear stuff first, what would it look like? But that's proof that the free market economy works better. You would have hated to see the government be the first to get their hands on all this AI stuff. They would have fucked it all up. At least the weaponization portion of it. I do believe that, like, well, we're getting to see. I think it's helpful, man. I would love for fucking Howard Hughes to be the guy that was the first one to build the atomic bomb. I might even write a fucking alternate history novel about the shit eventually, or ask AI to. Right. What would it look like? Right. It would be cool. I'd love to see that. I used to fucking love the idea of alternate history, Tesla stuff, along with. I'm obsessed with that time period, those characters in history. Tesla, Howard Hughes, all the geniuses and stuff throughout history. Not a fan fiction, but what do they call it? Alternate history novel. Like, what would it have looked like if the race to the nuclear bomb would have been led by someone like Howard Hughes, and he was the guy that hired all the guys at Los Alamos instead of the government to do it, right? It would probably, if he was or wasn't alive, he was alive at that time. Yeah, he didn't die until the 60s, right? But interesting thing though. When did Howard Hughes die? 1976. Wow, even later than what I thought. Yeah, so he was definitely alive during all that. Yeah, that'd be an interesting novel or story or whatever. What would it look like? It'd be like one of those things where you currently watch your YouTube feed and there's just like mindless garbage that plays in the background for the most part, and you always find yourself watching like the person that puts together like the type of things that you would think is the type of content that AI would generate. Shit that's just got like a slideshow with a narration to it, a narrative or whatever. I'm Clay Parker, but yeah, no, it'd be cool to see. It's a fun hypothetical. A good day. Well, this is taking me forever. All this goddamn Furblow's deed. I don't even have the quest. Why is it all over my map? Like, where do I even... I'm not level 10 yet. Defias Ambusher. Where do I pick up the fucking quest from? This shit is retarded. This shit is retarded. Yeah, but now it's interesting to see, right? it would be one of those things you would think if this were a breakthrough that came from like the Department of Defense, it makes you wonder if they did have that sort of thing, why the Department of Defense didn't have it first, or the Department of War or whatever. And you'd probably find if you were able to go through all the fucking filing cabinets there that they've had this shit for a while, you know. And that's one of the technologies that got shelved, and then the private sector came up with their solution to it. And that's the thing is what we've learned, right? Bob Lazar is one of the guys that really talks about it the most. It says that like with these UFOs and stuff, basically the only reason that we don't have like I guess there is a program to reverse engineer, like, but it basically is boils down to communication and compartmentalization. So like the guys that know how to do all this shit, they can never communicate. They might even be in the same building somewhere, right, working on different things, but like the nuclear propulsion guys don't ever get to talk to like the anti-gravitics guys, and the material science guys, you know, they're all sworn to secrecy. Like, if only these people could just talk to each other, what they couldn't build, you know what I mean? And which makes you wonder how somebody with like a polymath like Bob Lazar, I guess, is the reason why he was able to kind of fully understand all these aspects, or if he was the guy, I can't remember exactly what it was, but that understood the multiple disciplines required to kind of understand how these things works. But even he didn't know how exactly, you know. He knew it had something to do with the material that was the element 118 or whatever. And but he said, what did he say though that was super interesting though? He said it was called an electret rather, an electret. So a normal material has like a magnet has like a permanent magnetic field. There's these things called electrets, and these do exist. I just don't know why if there's one of those, then there might be a gravitic or whatever the equivalent of it is. If there's a strong magnetic, whatever, a magnetic, then there's an electret rather, and it's like it does the same as a permanent magnet, but with static. So like it just is consistently generating a static charge. Now I know that seems like that's not very interesting or anything, but the fact that something like a permanent magnet, when you look at a magnet, you're like, how the fuck can't this thing just make energy free? You know what I mean? You would think that if they had you know what I mean? It just seems like there should be a way to convert it to free energy somehow, right? Like it's always generating this force. How do you convert that force into energy? Yeah, I guess dynamos and all that, generators and all that stuff. But he said that the material that they used to build that thing was an electret. Electret. So it always had a permanent static field. It makes you wonder though if there's not, if what it all boils down to is like, is it a material science thing? Like, do we just, and you never know with something like AI, you know, where with things like graphene, like monoatomic or not monoatomic, but like single layer atom thick carbon, you know, seems to interface with our reality in a certain way that like electrons flow through it smoother, you know, like it's almost like a room temperature superconductor and all that stuff. The thing is that is the breakthrough for things like a flying saucer going to be material science breakthroughs or like a technological breakthrough? And even some have said that there's like they have like special computer chips and stuff that interface with reality a certain way. I know this is like hypothetical, like ancient alien shit, but you would think that just you could use, you know, I say you could use AI to come up with, but the brute forcing material science part where normally you would have to like mix alloys and shit together and like mix the stuff together to make an alloy and test it to see, okay, well, it's not a superconductor, but it can bend, it melts at this degree or whatever, this temperature. And like that process takes a shitload of time because you have to mix things in variable percentages on each material when you combine it and stuff, like a high level form of alchemy kind of. And then you have to make the actual material itself like an alloy, and then you have to test that alloy. Whereas if you had an AI that was able to, I say brute force, but like, okay, that attempt didn't work. Now use enough compute to find the next variation or the next permutation or iteration or whatever of that material until you find one that has like these, what do you call it? exotic properties, right? So like is it an electric or electret rather, or is it a, what sort of weird things does it do? Where if you look at graphene, you would think carbon. It's just carbon, and the way they structure the carbon atoms, the way they structure the carbon atoms makes this basic element, fundamentally the same as graphite, kind of, close to pencil lead, burnt burnt trees or whatever, burnt wood kind of stuff. It seems to interface with reality differently, so it's able to quantum tunneling and all the stuff it has, the effects that graphene has on quantum tunneling. So where I can't remember what exactly finds itself on the boundary layer of these things like graphene, and they actually can teleport through, like physically teleport through like physical material and stuff. The quantum tunneling effect, which is why computer chips and shit can't actually be smaller than what, like 2 nanometers or whatever. They're prone to quantum tunneling. So there's that bottleneck in compute with traditional processors and all that. Once you make a chip small enough, the electrons, I believe, that flow through the circuit itself teleport through the material from one side to the other and make it impossible to use in a traditional computer and all that stuff. But things like graphene have similar properties, and that what I mean by that is that brute forcing the mechanical, or say mechanical material process, you're liable to find at some point in time that there are more elements on the periodic table of elements that can be structured in unique ways that have unique properties, versus like having to discover an entirely new material or an entirely new alloy. And just how you structure the pre-existing elements on the periodic table of elements in interesting ways. It stands to reason, if we figured out a way to do it with just carbon, that there's probably other elements on the periodic table of elements that can be restructured in a way that give them exotic properties, or you know what I mean. What those are now, God only knows what that consists of, but that process is something that can be automated through AI. Where currently, like I said, the process is, well, you make this, okay, well, that didn't work, you try one more variation of it, well, that didn't do anything, that process is lengthy, because each one of those attempts could be like years and years worth of research and manufacturing to find out it doesn't do anything. But with AI, the testing process for that kind of thing, and simulating process to try and find out what those exotic properties are, is like the time required to do that is reduced greatly. So from a material science standpoint, AI, I think, man, is like where it's going to be at with that kind of thing. When I say brute forcing, it's like, well, think about that thing that you want as like a password, and you try every attempt until you get that thing that you want. Like, we're looking for an alloy that has these properties, right? It's like, run it through the fucking supercomputer, have it try every attempt it can to try and unlock essentially what the actual atomic structure that looks like, to give it that specific kind of exotic property, or whatever you want to call it. So what Bob Lazar was saying, it was that it was a more or less like it had an exotic drive on the craft as well, but it was a material science breakthrough that was able to help with the actual craft propulsion and all that stuff. And graphene's one of those things that seemingly just is one of the most common elements in the known universe, right? One of, I guess relatively common, but not quite as common as all the others. But just a unique way of structuring it. And then it has like if you look up graphene, dude, the thing's like a miracle. If you ever see all the shit graphene can do, carbon nanotubes and graphene, like burnt trees, basically structured in a way that make them like worth their weight. Like they're like gold, basically. If you could just mass manufacture, it's like, yeah, it's just as important or as powerful as gold is. And it's just restructured carbon atoms. See, it says graphene is a single one atom thick layer of carbon atoms arranged in a two-dimensional hexagonal honeycomb lattice. So the way that they describe it is like basically how is it structured? What does it look like if you were to draw it on a thing? Like AI can at some point in time um, automate that process of structuring atoms in a certain way and running through some sort of simulator to determine what properties they have. And if you find ones that have exotic properties like, oh, it's an electret, or it's a room temperature superconductor, so on and so forth. They don't necessarily have to be alloys, but I think just restructuring. Yeah, it says, it is a fundamental building block in an everyday graphite, pencil lead, and is renowned for being incredibly lightweight, transparent, flexible, hundreds of times stronger than steel. Like this stuff it's 100 to 300 times stronger than steel, yet flexible and stretchable. Electric conductivity. It is one of the most efficient conductors. Like, right, it's going to turn all your bad feelings into good ones, right? I think I want some of this graphene stuff, right? Known for allowing electrons to move through it incredibly fast without generating excess heat. So it's a thermal conductor, an electric conductor, 300 times stronger than steel. You're like, why don't they have something as big as the Large Hadron Collider making this shit then, right? Thermal conductivity, it conducts heat better than any other known material, period. Like, how the fuck is this stuff not, like, keep this shit a secret? How do they not keep this shit a secret? Yeah. Why isn't this everywhere? A single sheet is almost entirely transparent and is the lightest material known, with 1 square meter weighing less than a milligram. That is insanity. It's like you could use this material as like the standardization, like when I say yes, like standardization, we should base everything off. Yeah, it's hard to explain what I'm getting at, but this stuff is amazing. It did famously isolated in 2004, relatively new. It was 14 when this stuff was invented. Yeah, yeah, this is one of these things that I swear, man. The duo won a Nobel Prize, as they should. As they should in physics for in 2010, right? How hasn't there been this concerted effort to fucking make this shit on a mass scale? I don't know. You look up on YouTube. You look up on YouTube, though, there's like hobbyists and shit that have these graphene mining operations. Like they build these like ovens and these electrodes and stuff, and they take like coconut fibers and they make the shit out of coconut fibers. Super material, right? And that's just one of the many, like, when I say that in the future there's likely to be a time where more of these interesting materials are discovered, yeah, it's very likely. Well, why? Because we didn't learn about this until 2004 of all things, and it's made from carbon, right? But it's one of the more interesting materials, and that's not an alloy. It's a clever restructuring of carbon. So it's not like, oh well, it's like a percentage of carbon mixed with some titanium or any of this other stuff. It's just pure carbon. Burnt trees, you know what I mean? Coconut fibers burnt with electricity. But Bob Lazar, yeah, I get made fun of for talking about aliens on Twitter. Yeah, no one wants to sit there like, you don't think it's weird? Come on now. You don't think it's weird that this lady came out and said there's going to be a alien sighting abduction in Brazil during the soccer game, and then like one country over, this massive fucking earthquake occurs? Like that's a little weird. I got made fun of on Twitter for saying that. I'm like, I'm not making any sort of like claim or anything. I'm just saying, you don't think that's weird? Like in the middle, like had the right, I don't know, one thing askew basically from what actually happened, right? And it stands to reason, the thing I was watching the other day about gravity waves. Uh, well, if a fucking giant spaceship, I'm not saying that's what this is, but a giant spaceship's moving through planet Earth or whatever, and we can't see the fucking thing, its gravity could still effectively, like, it could still fuck with the tectonic plates and all that, right? And cause an earthquake. You know, that is a possibility. Not to say that that's what happened, but I'm just saying that it is weird that this person made this rather bold prediction, didn't come true, but then something else happened at the like the exact same fucking time. I'm paying attention. Yeah, I don't know what it means, but I'm paying attention. You know, I know that much. Yeah, they say, and they said I was smoking crack because of it. I have not had any crack today. I've not smoked any crack yet today. Oh, there was that just a little bit earlier. Yeah, I think I'm paying attention. That is weird. That's all. And I'm of the variety that believes that if UFOs interface with reality slightly different, then you might see a UFO in one place and you might hear it in another place, and it might actually be picking up cows off the ground, you know, in another place or whatever. Like it's out of sync with our reality in some way, shape, or form. So you might see it in one place and it be totally silent, and then you might not see anything in another place and it make this kind of humming noise or whatever, and then you might just see a cow floating in a field somewhere, you know, and it's essentially it's the sound it's making plus where it's physically located are all out of phase with our reality, right? Which is why we have these UFO sightings where you don't hear anything but you see it, and then these things where you hear these like people, they say they hear trumpets and things whirring in the wilderness and all that stuff. So you hear it but can't see it, and then you have these abductions where people seemingly just disappear. It's like because if fucking that's where it's actually interacting with reality, and we're just out of phase with it. Is one possibility, you know. It's one of those one of those theoreticals or whatever. Yeah, I'm kind of fucking tired of leveling this character already. I'm not really getting a whole lot done. Got a bowl of soup here soon. I gotta get on for raid here. But do you remember the reason why I have this series? Years and years ago, there was this not a meme, but this trend or whatever, where people are like, I'm out here, like, and the reason why, like, it started happening in the town that I was living in, this tiny town in Missouri, where you'd go out at like 4 in the morning, you could hear this like whirring noise. It sounded like, I don't know what. Some people said it was the grain silos, but it wasn't, because I would walk by I went to the grain silos every morning just to hear. I'm like trying to figure out where the fuck this noise is coming from. And I'm like, well, that's weird. We have all these UFO sightings in one place, and we hear this strange kind of noise. And if you hear it, it does sound kind of alien. I'll play a clip from it on YouTube real quick in a second, where for in like 2016 and 17, it was like a whole trend for a while where people like, you hear these what sound like trumpets and shit outside, right? Let's see, mysterious noise. It sounds like horns or something, right? And another thing too is also some of these UFOs. This guy used to make these videos. I can't remember what they were called, but they were time-lapse footage of the sky basically, and you were able to see these things kind of like carve paths into clouds and stuff. So something that you can't see interfacing with reality, something that you can't see you can hear, and something that you can see that you can't hear and isn't interfacing with reality. You're like, is it not just the fucking, they just aren't all in phase with each other, you know what I mean?
Strange sounds are being heard around the world. In Sweden, this sure sounds like a trumpet. In Michigan, another trumpet-like sound. In British Columbia, Canada, Dr. Glenn McPherson says he heard a strange humming sound in his home. First, he thought it was an appliance.
Ultimately, I cut the power to the entire house, and the sound got louder.
Then he discovered he was not alone.
This is, in fact, a worldwide phenomenon, and I'm calling it the worldwide hum.
Check out his Hum Map data project.
Hum
To
map.
date, some 17,000 civilians and scientists from around the world who call themselves Hummers have reached out to him, saying they heard the same thing. McPherson thinks the mysterious hum could be caused by low-frequency sound waves that sound like this. He actually built this 3-foot by 6-foot steel box that blocks out low-frequency sound waves. But for some reason, even inside it, he says he still hears the strange hum.
Going into the box made absolutely no difference whatsoever to my perception of the hum. If anything, maybe even it got louder.
Inside Edition producer Brianna Deutsch climbed inside the coffin-like box to test it out. She hears no hum.
It's pretty dark.
Now listen to these strange booms that sound almost from another planet. It could be a sonic boom from a fighter jet breaking the sound barrier.
You'd have a map of all that though. Every sonic boom, they clock all that shit, man. They keep logs of all that.
New Jersey actually caught the flash and then the sound of a meteor.
Huge explosion, loud enough and strong enough to knock the pictures off my walls and shatter the glass all over the place.
That may help explain some of the booms. But others remain a weird mystery.
Very weird. So remember when that was all going on for like a while there, in 2017 or whatever it was. Some of the shit did sound otherworldly. I'm gonna get my bowl of food real quick. sort of a relief. So I put the for sale sign on my car earlier today, and I'm like, God damn it, it's got a rebuilt title and all that stuff, and so far no one's really given me a hard time about it. Thank God. But I had a few phone calls this afternoon about it already, so that's good. I was thinking it'd be something that would take me months and months to sell, and it still might, but at least so far, people seem to be interested, so that's cool. But I have a tendency of doing things too early and too quick, so I need to make sure and wait that it's what's necessary before I do it, because it is a process. You know what I mean? And then preemptively get to trying to move it out of the way or whatever, only to find out that I didn't necessarily have to, because I'm like, well, thinks that it takes a couple months to happen, right? It might not take a couple months, so I need to adjust accordingly. But then again, those are just people calling about it. That might not be people actually trying to buy it. Looks like we got everything that we need. Hello? I guess we gotta try to get the Serpentine camera. Hello? And in all honesty, it wouldn't kill me to meet people, but in particular, for obvious reasons, but we got enough mana potions for the evening. Right, what's the song here? That's another thing. So your brain can recognize frequencies. Like, your brain is familiar with noises even if your ear isn't the way you hear it. Like, so the idea is that, like, your ear will pick up on the vibration, right? And then that creates a signal that your brain interprets as sound. Now, your brain is familiar with that regardless of if your ear is the one picking up the signal or not. So with some of these, like, technologies and stuff that the government isn't working on, obviously, what they can do is bypass your inner ear and your actual hearing, and actually send a signal directly to the brain using radio waves that your brain is then familiar with. Like, so you can hear, or like you get the impression that you're listening to a song even if you can't hear it, and you find yourself like humming the song in your head and stuff, like an earworm kind of. But what's interesting though is that, like, if there's a song that gives you like an answer, like I always seek for advice on certain things, and I'm like, and then it's strangest thing ever. then a song will pop into my head, right? And I'll go to the song and I'll listen to the lyrics of it, and the song will have the exact message that I need to hear. It's kind of weird. And I think it has to do with the fact that your brain, the actual brain part itself, even without the ear, is familiar with the signal or frequency that your ears, like if you were to hear a song, it's familiar like with that frequency or that tone or that sound, even if your brain is picking it up from something that isn't your ear, right? So yeah, just interesting. That's like some of the future technology kind of things that somebody's working on somewhere. I know for a fact somebody somewhere is working on this shit. So it's just a matter of time. So when I say like as far as technologies that I would invest in, that technology in and of itself, I would say is like definitely one of the things that the future will, one of those future technologies that we think, how did we ever fucking live without this shit, at some point in time? It's not like you can actually hear the sound, but your brain is familiar with it, so you get the impression of it, and you'll find yourself like humming a tune in your head suddenly. And you're like, yeah, well, you're picking up on something then. Kind of like a ringtone. But I'll wake up like any given day and I'll be like, why is this song, like first thing out of bed, why is this song stuck in my head? And I'll sing the song over and over in my head all day, and I realize like the song that I fucking woke up hearing and sort of singing in my head all day when I first woke up is the song that basically contains the message that I'm supposed to receive for that day, and sort of guidance throughout that day, like, you know what I mean? I know that sounds weird, trust me, but then again, I'm kind of a weird guy, and I wouldn't be telling you this if like my reputation, like I gave a shit about that, but they are working on this kind of thing, trust me. Now, how do you commercialize it? How do you make it a product, dude? Yeah, that's the thing. Well, first you have to find what probably would have to occur is the commercial product version of it, similar to AI. You know what I mean? When I was saying that earlier about how the private sector had their solution to the AI problem that was probably a thing that had already been on the shelf at the Department of Defense for the last 20 years. And then once the private sector creates it, then suddenly, they can acknowledge it. But until then, it's all just shit like those guys all working in cubicles have no clue what the fuck they're building, right? So I think this is one of those technologies that has been explored at some point in time by the Department of Defense, has been kept a secret, top secret, whatever type of clearance, whatever you need to see the shit or have worked on it. And that at some point in time, though, the private sector will come up with their solution, similar to how OpenAI came up with their solution to like large language models and all that, and transformers and tokenizing words and all that. And that's like probably a technology that somewhere at the Department of Defense or the government or wherever they've been working on the thing forever already. And I feel like that the radio technology and all that stuff is probably another one of those technologies that once the private sector comes up with their solution for it, then suddenly, there'll be some people that come forward and say, yeah, we've been working on this for a while now, It's always kind of how it works. But then again, is that the type of technology you would say would probably need to be regulated, right? More than likely. Yeah, there's some privacy implications, there's some privacy concerns, there's a whole bunch of things, right? But go watch, like, in theory, right? So people are like, well, that's just like, well, if you've bought the psyop that there isn't that your brain doesn't respond to electromagnetic radiation, then yeah, this is a far-fetched Looney Tunes, literally a tinfoil hat idea. I'm sitting there saying though, well, go look at the God helmet, the things that people have built, and actually they have medical uses and stuff to help depression, like basically electromagnetically induced frequency into the brain. They put these people in this chair and it triggers some part of the brain specifically that thinks that they're talking to God or whatever. Now, there's nothing connected to the head. There's nothing implanted in the head. It's not like Neuralink or anything. Purely just magnets, strong magnets, right? That being said, magnets are a little different than radio waves, but that's proof of concept, right? That's all it takes. That's what people get confused about things, like really just proof of concept, just prove that it works at all in theory even, you know. And like we've seen with OpenAI, and I'm not super well versed on how that all took place or whatever, but from what I've gathered, they were the ones that published the white paper that was then used as like the foundation to make these like large language model chatbots and things, you know, computers that can think. Like, and that was a proof of concept paper, wasn't it? So, and then now we see how it scales and scalability and all that stuff gets taken into consideration or whatever. You're like, yeah, so technically there are some things that proof the concept that your brain can be directly influenced by electromagnetic radiation. That's not far-fetched, is it? I don't think that's like conspiratorial or anything. I would think we'd all agree that that's not like outlandish or anything, but you get made fun of for talking about it because the implications are, you know, and historically, what's the frequency, Kenneth, people kind of shit, right? But in reality, you know, like you fucking stick your head in a microwave, you'll feel it, you know, is what it boils down to. Let's see what the God helmet's like.
I guess I was sort of in a state of fear where I didn't want to turn around and look.
A very friendly, welcoming feeling at one instance.
I was starting to feel very anxious and very cold. The outlines of a human body, almost complete and total panic. Very visual experiences. One of the first ones
Here at Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario, a team is investigating certain common perceptions of the inner mind.
We'll be taking a baseline recording first.
Right now, they're looking at the electromagnetic brain patterns seen in people having the near-death experience.
To compare that.
The research is led by Dr. Michael Persinger.
Basically, at any given time, all experience is due to those portions of the brain that are most metabolically active. If we can simulate that by applying complex, meaningful magnetic fields to the brain, we can also induce those experiences.
This experiment is testing the idea that mystical perceptions and paranormal experiences can be turned on at will, not by hypnosis or shamanic drumming, but by a scientist, stimulating nerve activity in the brain. The volunteer sits blindfolded in a soundproof chamber. This sensory deprivation allows the mind to focus on electromagnetic patterns transmitted across the brain through this modified crash helmet.
If you feel anything change with the electrode,
They're able to simulate the exact brain patterns that occur in near-death experiences.
Comfortable? Yeah.
Dr. Persinger hopes the research will benefit psychotherapy.
We tried to evoke the fragments that compose the near-death experience and other mystical experiences, such as detachment, feelings of moving through a tunnel, hearing voices, the sense of a presence, usually on the left side. Our major thrust is ultimately to apply this to dealing with things such as psychological depression.
After a while, I remember feeling that there was someone else in the room with me, almost looking over my left shoulder. It was all I could do to not turn my head and want to look.
if you stimulate the deep portions of the temporal lobe, so you can get very, very vivid imagery, and the emotional commitment or the emotional sensation that something is profound, real, cosmically real, and personally significant.
It's a male voice, but it's like really, really far away. As if you can just sort of like catch a tone. You can't really hear. You can tell that it's someone talking. You can distinguish that. But you can't make out any kind of words or anything like that.
What we've been doing recently is generating words as magnetic patterns. And even though the person isn't hearing it through their ears, their brain is interpreting it. So they're actually having fragments of experiences as if they're hearing it when in actual fact they cannot be.
These experiences are so strong, they're utterly real for the person who has them. They can be as profound as a religious conversion, yet we can generate them with a machine. These mind games are beginning to shed their secrets. The scientist becomes the shaman. But where are the limits? What else can people be made to believe?
Well, one thing that's
Or we
very
need
clear,
some regulation.
you can control the
Needs
person's
to regulate,
experiences,
yeah. No, this
and
is
they
like
don't know they're being controlled. That's why this
nuclear bomb,
technology
AI, then this. Trust me, this has to be
is a
regulated at
potentially
some point in
powerful
time.
one and has a two-edge.
But I will be
to its
making the
sword.
company that does it. I know that much at some point in time.
As a tool of science, this technology may bring us valuable new understandings of the obscure depths of the human mind. But there's a dark side. In the wrong hands, could it become an instrument of power, a means of oppression? If we're not careful, will mind games one day become mind control?
In the laboratory, we have reproduced every aspect of the God experience, every essence, every component of it, from the rising sensation to the feelings of ecstasy, to the feelings of a sensed presence, to the feelings that you're at one with the universe. We can do that experimentally.
Professor Persinger has gone straight to the source of creativity, emotion, and fantasy by stimulating this area, the temporal lobes and the limbic system, with complex magnetic fields that set up electrical charges in the brain. In our presence, one subject had a near-death experience.
A sudden wave of darkness. It's a distant point of light.
No two people have responded in exactly the same way, but all of them come out of this chamber with a profound sense that something hugely significant has taken place.
It's a sound chamber that doesn't allow anything from the outside to come inside. And I started hearing voices. I started seeing things.
Started with faces. There was a lot of faces, but distorted faces, moving kind of almost like seeing something through heat.
I felt a presence behind me, like kind of staring down at me, and it seemed very strange.
This presence was it wasn't frightening at all. It was very comforting, actually.
It was like dreaming, but I was awake. Just like when you have a dream, sometimes you wake up and your dreams are just so, it was so real.
I saw bright lights and I heard voices. Was that God speaking? Or was that Professor Persinger just flipping a few switches?
What we have found is that individuals who show a temporal lobe sensitivity or creativity and who are very religious, in that setting, they will have a religious experience. We can generate the sensed presence, which is defined as God.
The social phenomenon very often determines how you label a phenomenon or label an experience. The sensed presence has been with the human species forever. The idea of an entity visiting us, the idea of waking up in the middle of the night and feeling some sentient being nearby, be it positive or negative. Incidentally, the evil ones are usually the left side. The positive talking ones are on the right side. Simply reflects the organization of your brain activity. But the culture determines how you experience it and how you label it. You have an experience that are easy to produce. How you label it and how you then explain it when you wake up will be a function of the cultural label. 50 years ago, they were almost always visitations by angels. Now, with the emphasis being on aliens, space, the great frontier, now the thrusters towards alien types of experiences. 100 years ago, they would have been religious. Let's look at the nature of the sense presence itself. If I ask you who you are, your sense of self, is primarily a language or left hemispheric process. It's not an accident that people will fight or die to maintain their language and culture. That is yourself. The right side of the brain, the right hemisphere, is more involved with the sense of a presence. It's like yourself, except that it's more involved with another feeling of an entity, sort of like another self. And you can stimulate it a variety of ways. It can happen during dreams. Right? That's very common every night. You feel yourself looking at yourself outside of yourself, this double kind of individual. It can also happen if you stimulate the brain normally if you're stressed, particularly personal stress. But the majority of time, it's due to strong magnetic fields. By strong, I mean generated within nature, stimulating your brain while you're in a special state that we call sleep. If between 2 and 4 o'clock in the morning, there is the appropriate magnetic stimulation, it could be from geomagnetic activity or from something regional, such as strain, and it stimulates the right hemisphere in particular, people have a sense of presence. They suddenly wake up and they feel there's an entity nearby. They may actually feel stimulations of their body. Men tend to experience anal stimulation, women uterine stimulation, and the reason is because the area of the brain that's stimulated is involved with the internal states, with the uterus, with the internal states. You feel like you're floating. You may actually have a sensation of a presence touching you.
In a room void of sensory stimuli, Dr. Persinger asked his subjects to put on a special helmet that was capable of modifying the electromagnetic waves experienced by the brain. In this controlled environment, several participants said that they sensed the presence of strangers in the room, and some even claimed to see unknown entities.
It's actually very easy to induce an entity experience. 80% of everyone who goes through our laboratory, through particular patterns of fields, have a sensed presence. How they experience it would be a function of what they expect. One of the questions we've asked many times is the kinds of patterns we apply to people in the laboratory. Do they occur in nature? And the answer is yes, they do, because that's where we got them. We've actually gone out into the field where people have experienced haunts or have been abducted. We record the magnetic disturbances, which are usually transient, they're not there all the time. And we record them on our equipment. Stan Corner and I very often go out and record them on fancy equipment, bring them back, digitize them, and then apply them to the brain and produce the same experiences. Actually, we find that there is about 10 to 20%
How is that not the future?
that's really prone, very sensitive to the environment. They're the kind of canaries of our culture. The sense of the mind canaries. They are very sensitive to the electromagnetic fields. They are the creative ones. They're musicians, they're writers. They have tremendous versatility in their thoughts. Sometimes they may even be considered crazy, but the point is because of their ideas are so creative. These people's brains are so sensitive that with the right pattern of activity generated through their brain, naturally, they experience a sense presence. 50 years ago, they would probably say they were visited by angels. 100 years ago, by demons, incubi and succubi that would would steal sexual favors from them. Now, of course, the entire phenomenon...
Like anybody would want to R her. Like anybody would want to R her. Yeah, so I've never seen that before, and that basically explained exactly what I understood from piecing it together from other things. The fact of the matter is, even he says, basically they have the ability to digitize thought into electromagnetic waves and all that shit. Yeah, that's insanity. That's the future. I don't care like what you say. That's a potent technology, and we don't use it at all. The thing is that you can do this shit with radio waves. You might even see a future where you have a few of these boxes in your home, and they're able to relay messages and stuff like that. Yeah, so I'm not making this shit up, obviously. It does take a bit of understanding and like to step outside your comfort zone if saying like, oh, well, isn't that like the fucking blah, blah, blah. Like, even he said specifically, no, you don't physically hear it. Your brain is just familiar with the brainwave pattern. Now, you couple that with the Meta Tribe V2, where they map the brain while this all goes on, and then you map the brain waves with the experience and everything. So relaying a message is like an attunement process, right? Whereas like you get communicated one message by one frequency, it's like a fingerprint. Each one is identical or not identical, but unique to the individual. You have to basically map out the desired. You have to map it out before you can actually transmit a message or whatever, to understand like a feedback loop. Like, okay, what did you hear here? What did you feel? What did you hear here? What did you feel here? What did you understand at this point in time? What song did you hear? What the impression that you got, kind of thing. And then it's like a teaching process or a feedback loop. And when you fully teach the AI what it is that the signal it's sending you, what you interpret it as, then the AI would effectively have the ability to communicate directly through to your skull with radio waves. You know, just like a large language model has a text output, an AI would have basically a thought output where it'd be able to broadcast an actual thought signal to you. You know, so that's sort of like, I believe that's the future in some way, shape, or form. That's all done with just like not passive radio waves, but active radio waves. But yeah, it's a mapping process, really, with all the other shit. That technology plus mapping the brain is all it requires. Even that guy said, and this is like 1987 or whatever, and even that guy said, we can map the brain and then digitize the fingerprint essentially and then retransmit it. The only difference is my thought of what a dog barking sounds like transmitted to you might sound like a cat. You know what I mean? But if you were to say, we broadcast this signal, what did you hear? And the person hears a cat, you tell the large language model or the AI, well, I heard a cat. Then it changes the dog to cat, and now suddenly it has the correct signal. And you're able to effectively telepathically communicate with this future device at some point in time. I guarantee you they have it somewhere. Same with songs and everything else. So I'm logged out for raid currently because I got the 3% crit buff. I'll be right back in a few minutes.